Hello and welcome back to Art in Isolation, Programme 3, in which I'm going to introduce you to a portrait by an artist who many thought was mad, bad, dangerous to know. The portrait that I want to show you is up the elm staircase, but just before I do, can I bring your attention to some of these things that we are constantly finding in our garden. Remember, this is a very ancient house. There's been a place here for a millennium, and every now and then you just pick things up, like this spoon, pewter spoon, possibly 17th century, a little shoe buckle of the same century. And every time one digs and comes up with something like this, you feel this tiny little sort of electric current of connection with the past, with the many, many families who've lived here. But it's a 20th century portrait that I want to show you now. If you saw our last programme of Art in Isolation, you may recall that we filmed a picture by John. Now this is by her brother, Augustus John, who was a phenomenally well-known artist and totally different in temperament from his sister. Augustus John, like his sister, went to the Slade School, but very quickly became the toast of the college. He was known for the swiftness of his brush, the beauty of his line. He was described as the Michelangelo of his day. He married a fellow artist from the Slade School called Ida Nettleship, but then proceeded to live in a ménage à trois with his mistress and Ida, the mistress's name being his famous muse for the next 30 or 40 years, Dorelia MacNeill. But just as a character, he was a total Dionysian. He stopped at nothing. He was a hard-drinking, fornicating, charismatic figure whose children ran about him naked in the summer because he didn't really feel like dressing them. When he wasn't drunken, he was focused and inspired by his subjects. He could produce some epic portraits. We've been very lucky over the years at our gallery to have handled some of them. In fact, just have a quick look at these and then we'll return to his son, for this is what the portrait's of. But the portrait that we're looking at here, which I love so much in this room, everything about it, the character, the colours, it hasn't been here that long. In fact, I bought it in the previous lockdown, and it now sits here in a sort of pride of place. But it's a very, very different mood. So Robin he's about 12 years old. The year is around about 1916. Robin's mother died when he was 3 years old. And I suppose the first thing to sort of point out about this picture is its lovely colours. It seems like a rather sort of superficial thing to say, but I just adore that terracotta-y sort of pink. It's not quite pink, it's something close to it. The skin, of course, is warm and terracotta, but has also been highlighted with pink. And there's that lovely sort of crisp line that surrounds it all, particularly the hair. I love the sort of the edge of it. And what he's doing here is showing the influence of a massively significant artist who not many people have heard of today, But in the late 19th and early 20th century, he was hugely seminal, and his name was Puvis de Chavannes. He was a painter of murals, particularly of a symbolic nature. But what he did was he pulled the classical painting of 1,000 years before into the repertoire of a modern artist and produced a sort of vocabulary and style of painting and colouring and an orientation towards a certain type of subject matter that artists of the day really loved. Another aspect of this painting, which is so appealing and makes the colours, I think, work so well. I'm sounding like an interior designer when I'm saying this, but I do think that actually, as just a piece of decoration, this is glorious. I'm going to come to the characterisation in a moment, partly because it's painted on, I think, a white primer, and that makes the colours shine more. It's a very curious thing about oil painting, and that is that even though you can't see it, the underlying colour will inform the top colour. But what about the child? You know, what about the characterisation? You know, the lovely thing about Augustus John is, although he was impossible as a father and as a husband or as a partner or lover, he was deeply connected to his children, certainly on an artistic level, because some of the best paintings that he did are of his kids. We do know, though, however, that his relationship with Robin was pretty appalling. He would observe that he just sort of sat there in a sort of state of silent hatred and disgust for his father. And it's true, because later on in life, Robin recalls his relationship with his father. He writes about it. And he says, you know, my father was a rebel. But he said he hated that type of rebellion. He just wanted like a normal life. So he rebelled against his father's rebelliousness. And I think this is what you're seeing here in this painting. In a sort of stalwart way, he's saying, okay, you know, paint me, father, or dad, or whatever term he used, but I'm not going to yield to you and your life. He's only 12, but I think you've got a little bit of that truculence and a reminder and an indication of the range and capacity of Augustus John as a portrait painter. It's altogether, I think, very successful, and I can't imagine very easily being able to part with it.
It was also only recently that I discovered that this picture was in the studio sale of the works of Augustus John after he died. In other words, rather poignantly, this picture remained with him. He kept this image of his son.
In the next episode, I'm going to take you to another part of the house, to the barn, in fact, where we have another parent and child picture, but of a very different kind. And just as a taster, I'm going to show you an image, it's coming up now, of the baby's face. I wonder whether you could put an approximate date on when that was painted. It's not easy. Painting children, particularly babies, is an extraordinarily challenging art. That's all for this particular programme. Thank you for watching, wherever you are, in isolation, whether you be in proper lockdown in this country or in some other state elsewhere. I do hope you're okay. Take care, and we'll be back soon.